The time is now. Welcome, everybody, to the Time is Now podcast with Dr. Slava Shut. I'm Dr. Slava Shut, Doctor of Physical Therapy, entrepreneur, CEO. It's a pleasure to have my special guest today. This is our special time together. Let's go. I want to welcome today's guest, Noah Healy. Noah is a mathematician who founded the company Coordisc, a commodity market algorithm called Coordinated Discovery Market. It's a pleasure to have you, my friend. Your intelligence is intriguing. Please tell us who you are and give us an intro.
Sure. Well, as you said, my name is Noah Healy. I do math for fun and also for an income every once in a while. And my major interest is computational math. Computers actually were invented as a side effect of trying to solve the math problem of how to solve the kind of arithmetic problems we give to grade schoolers, which is a weird way for something to be invented. I have sort of a similar tale of where my idea comes from. I was trying to invent a communication protocol and just found this better strategic situation for marketplaces.
That's amazing. So, I want to know how you put everything together, because let's admit it, okay? Most of the people listening, they don't find math fun, right? You, as soon as I introduced it, as soon as you heard your baby mentioned that algorithm, look at you now. You're you light up, and it's awesome. You have passion in this. This is your baby. This is something you've developed. So can you bring us into your world of the passion and excitement? Make math exciting for us.
Okay. The thing that I think really makes things come together is finding how the pieces can fit in with each other. And so for my project, the central thing that everything has to fit into is what makes a marketplace work. A system where people are coming together to do something that they're agreeing to do. The critical thing there is that everybody involved needs to want the same thing. And so how do you achieve this thing? What is a static thing that everyone can want in a world that's moving in 7.8 billion directions at once, that's changing every minute of every day? And so the sort of first insight was that price is too ephemeral for people to care about. But price over time isn't. Right. Price over time is the thing that we could come to a common understanding about. And so once you change price from a number to a function, then a whole new world opens up. And it's a world of what's known as infinite dimensional functions. Now, this sounds really bad. In many cases, it is. Are you familiar with the Fibonacci sequence?
No.
So you might have heard of this before. You start with 1, 1, and then each next term is right. The last two terms added together. 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, right. 8.
Yeah.
This is famous because it shows up in nature all over the place. Breeding rabbits under certain constraints will form a population of size the next term in the sequence. The spiral that you construct out of making Fibonacci squares and putting them around each other is very similar to the spirals that sunflower seeds, nautilus shells, and many other things create. if you were to graph a Fibonacci sequence on a line, you could think of it as sort of a step function. You have sort of step up, step up, step up. But if you think about it, you could make that thing contiguous by just putting curves instead of steps. And you could do the same rules, and each piece of the curve would blow up the same way the Fibonacci worked. Well, that move from one value over an interval to a function of values over an interval, that's infinite dimensional.
Right.
So this kind of simple relationship of just add the value from one before to the value from two before, and that's your value, can easily produce an infinite dimensional system. And one stable version and smooth version of the Fibonacci sequence is something known as the golden ratio, which shows up in architecture because it's also paper, like the A4 paper is golden ratio. That exponential curve meets that rule. Every point, one before, two before, added up is the current point. And so that's an example of an infinite dimensional object when viewed in that fashion.
So you're trying to predict patterns, correct? You're trying to, based upon mathematical formulas, I just want to make sure I got this. You're trying to create inferences of the future based upon mathematical principles of how numbers work.
Yes, but I'm trying to create one of those things that everyone on Earth can participate in a way that what they'll want is to make that system move towards this common goal. You probably have opinions about what's been happening with, inflation and prices. You might have opinions about where those things might go in the future. Other people also have opinions. They might be better, they might be worse than yours. But between all of us, we know what's happening and what's going forward by our own lights, by definition, because everyone's knowledge equals everyone's knowledge. So the object is to extract out of sort of everyone's knowledge the truest possible single common belief about some actual economic variable that we can then all use to plan our lives around. If we know that wheat's going to get expensive and rice is going to get cheap, then we can change what we're buying and selling to adjust ourselves to that.
Do you have a nugget for us where you are literally taking some issue or situation in our economical status here in the United States? Okay, you can either make it regional or the entire United States, whatever you want, based upon your algorithms.
I'm afraid not, because what my system does is it forms a marketplace. So I'm working with some people to set up marketplaces and searching the world for more people that want to do that. But the algorithm doesn't produce knowledge, it distills knowledge. And so it needs to be attached to market interest to have the knowledge to distill.
So enough people have to input to get any sort of output, correct?
Correct.
Okay. How many inputs do you get in any, like, what is your end value that you're trying to exponentially decipher?
The end value is having markets that are more transparent and more stable and less costly than the markets that we presently have. The transaction cost in marketplaces, it varies widely around the world. And according to the US government, transaction costs in the US commodity space is 16%. And we're widely regarded as one of the lowest transaction cost countries on Earth. So that means that effectively everywhere else is worse than that. So when you think about buying flour or aluminum foil or gas, an enormous fraction of the cost that you are paying is just the price discovery cost that the producer and sort of interim manufacturer had to undergo to find each other and get a deal.
Well, we're the biggest consumer on the planet of every raw material that you could possibly think of. So I imagine, that control of that kind of percentage is probably because we are the biggest consumer. Would you say?
We have to extract. So what I'm saying is that according to the government figures from the last time they published this, within a year, we were doing 4.8 trillion in commodity transactions, which that's the big number because of we're the big player.
Right.
But 800 billion of that was cost overhead in the financial sector. So $1.06 more or less of that transaction. Now, other places have smaller transaction volumes because they're smaller, but they have worse overhead percentages. I've talked to several people in India, for example, and in India, there are an average of 30 middlemen per transaction that are effectively government mandated. And their structure of how farms operate is not the sort of independent businesses that we use in this country. And other countries have things much more similar to India than we have here.
Gotcha. Well, you described your company as a better market for a wealthier world. What does that mean to you?
Well, again, let's just think about some raw figures here. If the overhead costs being imposed by marketplaces on the US economy are $800 billion a year, and again, that number is very old, it's higher than that now. The 30-year smeared out average growth rate of the US economy is about 2% per year. And we're 22-ish trillion, call it 20 to 25 trillion. So we would expect our economy to grow between $400 and $500 billion in a year, sort of at random. That $800 billion is essentially a deadweight loss to the economy. So if we were to cut it in half, we would double the growth rate of our economy. And because raw materials are proportional to the size of your economy, the next year we would have a similar growth rate to the previous year, and our economy would start growing at 2 full points or more faster than it used to. And that's it. Suddenly we're vastly wealthier, and not just us. Like I said, in other parts of the world, the overhead is even worse. And so the improvement in their ability to expand their economy is even greater.
Gotcha. So your company flowchart, I mean, it looks like our worst nightmare in calculus. It looks super complicated. How would you describe your work to the people who are sitting there like, I'm not smarter than a 5th grader?
That's sort of my primary challenge, to try to figure out how to break this down into elements that sort of can be described to anybody. And essentially, the closest I've gotten so far is that it works something like an arch. Instead of deals being bilateral, where it's a buyer and a seller, and they both have some amount of information, and they kind of come together to make the best deal they can. This is a 3-way interaction, where buyers, sellers, and sort of information brokers or negotiators are all coming together. And so the way it works is that the informed people have to go first. The informed people have to get together and come up with their consensus and publish that, and then attract production and consumption to that consensus point. We think that this is the price, and we could easily include, or really only consist of, producers and consumers. But we think that this is the point where we're going to come together, and then we see how much actually comes together at that point. And then based on what's happening in the news, how well the existing system did, then we come up with our new belief about what the future looks like and see how that works. And so there's a continuous proposition test cycle that can adjust itself until it's reached the point where what's being proposed is what people would want to agree on if they knew everything. And so then the entire system is operating smoothly.
But I see that working to perfection if you have a homogeneous kind of input. We have such diversity and a lot of people giving the input for these variables, right? So have you known of anybody in the United States to agree on anything? It seems like we're so divergent on thoughts in many different places, whether it be sports, politics, religion, race, everything. So how do you get such clarity of so much coming in where you could actually have these predicted values?
Well, that's where economics comes to our rescue, because in fact, everybody does agree on things like the price of crude oil, which is basically the same everywhere in the country, or the price of corn, which is basically the same everywhere in the country. So these marketplaces for the major commodities already exist and are already producing that sort of accord. And in fact, that's what distinguishes marketplaces from other social institutions like governments, religions, sports, that they are typified, and their value proposition comes from their ability to produce accord. The difficulty is that modern markets have started to become every bit as discordant as some of these other institutions. And a lot of that is down to the increased noise and speed that modern computing technology allows. The sort of discord around an accord model that is the foundation of marketplaces really only works up to the limit of human interaction and human consciousness interaction. And unfortunately, now that we're fully outside that realm, we are starting to see more and more crashes, melt-ups, other kinds of bubbles, disasters happening with greater and greater frequency and greater collateral severity.
Gotcha. When in life did you say, you know what, this is good stuff. This is the direction I'm going to head. This is the industry I want to be in. Where did this whole plan start?
So I started doing this after I figured this out, simply because it looked mathematically challenging to attempt to design a system that functioned like this. I actually went down a bit of a rabbit hole. My first instinct was to try to find the best system possible using this approach that I'd come up with. And then when I couldn't figure out how to prove that a system could be the best, I spent several weeks seeing if I could prove that it wouldn't be possible to prove the existence of a best system. Once I'd gotten it all sort of written down and tuned, then I did the algorithmic analysis. And that's when, to my surprise, I worked out that it was significantly better on stability and cost dimensions than the systems that presently existed, and very rapidly moved to the kinds of, kind of simple napkin math of the system we currently have costs this much.
Right.
My system costs an almost arbitrarily lesser amount. The difference goes to the growth rate of the economy. And so are you familiar with net present value, for example?
No.
So net present value is the idea that money in the future isn't worth as much as money now is.
Okay, yes.
So if we make a deal for me to give you $10,000, if you're getting it right now, you might give me like a used car for it. If you're getting it in 50 years, maybe you'll give me like a cup of coffee for it, depending on what you think about, the possibilities of hyperinflation.
Right.
So in an economy that's growing exponentially, that offsets the discount for net present value. So if you change the rate that the economy grows at, the ratio between those two rates is essentially the amount that you expand the economy. So if you have an economy that's growing at X and you can increase X by 10% on a durable basis, then you're effectively increasing general wealth in a net present value sense by 10%. Since this has a very real, chance of doubling the growth rate at a net present level, this doubles human wealth. And since it does it in a way that's independent of what sort of economic innovations that we develop, so somebody invents a new kind of mine or a new kind of farm that vastly increases human wealth, this doubles things on top of that.
I find this fascinating. Not everybody likes math. The end result, I think people, if they open their mind, they would like this a lot more. Let me ask you a question. How many people are in this space, right, that you're in? And why isn't our government like knocking down your door right now, like handcuff you to the desk and the computer and have you not leave until you figure out this nonsense is going on? Because, to me, you're a rational guy. You make this world a smarter place. It makes sense. Math does not lie. People lie, math does not. Why do they not have you chained to the computer at the government and have you start fixing some stuff?
Well, commenting on other people's motives that's sort of beyond me. In terms of who's in my space, I am. The existing market design goes back to the Renaissance, and we don't even call it a design. The general consensus is that it was an accident. It's universally assumed that it is in fact perfect, and I, as part of my sort of startup into this, I've read several of the important textbooks on market design, market microstructure, and so on, mostly in order to pick up the jargon to be able to talk to people about these things. And there's a subtle fact about computer communication that invalidates, in a small but sadly significant way, one of the primary assumptions that's built into the proof that existing markets are perfect. If physics didn't work the way it actually does, and instead worked in some different way that didn't invalidate that assumption,
Right.
then they would be correct and markets would be perfect. But unfortunately, and I am effectively alone in this knowledge, physics actually does work the way that, or at least as well as we can tell, works the way that we observe it to work, and that breaks down the informational content required to cause markets to equilibrate under the circumstances that we have at present. In terms of why government isn't seeking me out more, bureaucracies are very hard to communicate with, and they are not looking for anything that's outside of the immediate status quo as answers for any of the problems that they're having. I have had discussions with people in the CFTC and some other people who were kind enough to actually meet with me, but because of their positions, couldn't take any official position. I'm currently fighting with the Patent Office, which has now blankly refused to grant my patent in spite of offering me a notice of acceptance twice now, for reasons which they cannot explain to me why they're doing this. My patent examiner and my patent examiner supervisor have communicated with my attorneys and sent emails, and they are at a loss to explain the reasons being given to them for why the patent is in suspension. There are a handful of people around the world that are working on building projects that would incorporate this technology. And we'll see if once they get off the ground, how things roll from there, or if somebody else, shows up and gets going. But most of the people I've spoken to sort of hit, oh, it's a math problem. I'm not good at math. I'm going to stop talking to you. And that's the end of the conversation.
Right. So I'm going to save you the trouble of trying to figure things out. And I'm going to simplify things for you really quickly. I'm an opinionated guy and I'm not no dummy myself. The reason you are not being called in is because it's logical. It makes sense. It would make the government not so important because the whole country, the entire world possibly, would be financially stable. We would have agreement. We would have wealth, everybody. But no, we have to have only a select few running things and they become not important. The government can't control you if you're financially stable. They control the masses. This is old as time. How do you control people? Keep them in the dark, keep them poor, and keep them dependent. You're not going to get a patent, unfortunately, maybe not, because there's higher powers at stake that says, if we get this out, we might have to fix some things. If we fix some things, we're not so important. If we're not so important, what's going to happen? So, I mean, I simplified things.
That's
jeopardy,
that's a possibility. Unfortunately, what I'm seeing is that the markets that we are all dependent upon, even the people that you're talking about are dependent upon, are failing in real time. And once you see it, particularly once you realize the structure of the problem, which is essentially just a noise versus signal problem. It's just like when you're listening to the radio in your car and you pull out on the highway and suddenly there's more noise. So if you want to keep hearing your song, you got to turn it up. But then once you've gone far enough that you're away from the station and it starts to fuzz, so then there's just less and less and less signal relative to the noise. And eventually you can't hear the song at all anymore, even though there still might be some faint traces in there. That's what is going and will continue to be going on with the marketplace, is that noise is going to flood in and continue to flood in until there's so little signal that we can't use the markets anymore. And we've seen during the 20th century what industrial societies that don't have access to marketplaces work like. And it's not something that anybody would want to experience.
No. And we do have no idea what that's even like. We're such a different society right now. Most people can't even fathom the things that have happened in history or the trajectory that things could have gone without certain marketplaces.
The thing about society is that it's too complicated. Nobody's smart enough to figure out what's going on. So unless we have some way,
You're close.
well, thank you, but I am nowhere near close. An analogy I like to use is sort of like tug of war. If we have 7.8 billion people, who would be strong enough to take up one side of the rope against the rest of us? Like, nobody. How many people could win a tug of war against 30 other people? Like, nobody. Olympic super heavy weightlifters couldn't beat like 50 kindergartners. Like, the weight disparity alone would crush the poor guy. And so even with a lot of errors and a lot of mistakes, the collective wisdom is so much wiser than the individual wisdom that we need institutions that can actually find and magnify that information. And we're very much trying to build institutions that obliterate or obscure that information from as many people as possible.
Amazing. So every segment, we like to have people who have written questions and have asked things and have commented. So we have a question from our audience we picked. It's from Twitter. Why do elaborate plans never work out?
Actually, that's an easy one. There's this concept called a normal accident. And the way it works is simply this. Imagine some very simple thing like a table. It's got 4 legs, flat on top. How can it break? Well, the top could split in half. One of the legs could crumble. That's kind of it. So there's like 5 things that can go wrong. And every second you're using that, one of those 5 things can go wrong. Let's think of something that sort of goes bad. How about a light bulb? So we take a light bulb, we plug it in. If it doesn't fizzle out instantaneously because it was a lemon, it lasts for thousands of hours. Now I put another light bulb next to it. Now the 2 of them are going to fail independently. So the time that I would have to wait on average for one of them to break is about half the time, because one of them can break and the other one breaks. Now I plug in 10,000 light bulbs. Suddenly the probability that one of them is a lemon is almost perfect. So where a complicated plan gets itself in trouble is that every single kind of moving piece you have in a system is another normal possibility for an accident to happen. That might be good or it might be bad. But if your complicated plan is a plan and it's interlocked and they're put together and there's interdependent, let's say you're lighting up like a sports stadium with 1 million light bulbs that are set up the way old Christmas tree lights used to be. It's all in serial. So if any light bulb fails, the entire thing won't turn on. Suddenly, failure is guaranteed. And of course, it's a normal accident. Something will go wrong somewhere, and that will cascade, and then everything will go wrong everywhere. So the only way you can have complex systems not almost instantly fail is to have systems that have a lot of independence and a lot of sort of local self-sufficiency that are kind of built up around mutual capacities rather than simple, production. And otherwise, you got to put in the energy for maintenance to match your complexity level. And that's if you go talk to people that, we have highly automated factories, and you should talk to the people that design and operate those, because a highly automated factory isn't something that you walk away from for 20 years and come back and just collect the money. It's a thing that very intelligent people pay a lot of attention to every second that it's on, and are constantly monitoring and checking and keeping it operating like that. And so that's it.
Right. Some things have to be simple, right? We talk about this in business all the time. Some things you're going to have to not overcomplicate. Some things in your business and your business model and a problem you're trying to solve has to work with foundational things that keep it simple. And that reduces the probability of failure. Man, Noah, it's been incredible with you, man. You should go on Jeopardy. You could light up a room with that brain, and that's awesome. I hope you keep doing the work. I hope you keep plugging away. I hope you get your patents. May God bless you with health and success. And do you have any last words? Anything that the audience wants to know? And plug yourself. How can we find you?
Certainly. So you can contact me directly if you'd like to at noahphealy@yahoo.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm Noah Healy there. And there's a website that describes more about my project and coordinated discovery markets, CDM in general, called Coordisc, Coordisc, for coordinated discovery. And you can find more about it there.
Amazing. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you're watching us. If you're listening, make sure to rate us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Thank you for listening to the Time Is Now podcast with me, Dr. Slava Shut. And we're going to be every Friday at 8 a.m. Send in your questions to Dr. Slava Shut on social media. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you, Noah, for being with us today.
Thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun.